Hello, my friends. Jerry Rosa here in the Rosa Stringworks Man Cave with lesson number 3, Nashville number system. And this is where, as I said before, the rubber meets the road. This is where you're going to see how I think about music. I didn't invent the Nashville number system, have not much to do with it at all. But I look at it from a different perspective than even the folks in Nashville do, I think. I have a different take on it, and you'll get to see all of that this evening. And I think if you can try to follow my line of thinking after this lesson this evening, some of you will need no further lessons. Some of you will need to go back through all this and review it 2 or 3 more times. But trust me, after tonight, if you're following what I'm throwing out here, you can virtually play anything. Okay, but let me first do a couple of housekeeping things and a couple of caveats. The first housekeeping thing is to just say super thank you to all of those who have contributed. I really do appreciate it. I've been so busy lately that I haven't had a chance to get in and do my paperwork and get caught up on bookkeeping and all that. Well, I did that the other day, and I was absolutely floored on how well y'all have supported me on this venture with this training, and I really do appreciate it. You can make contributions via a super chat if you would like, but my preference would be that you just send a PayPal contribution to my email address, which is rosastringworks@gmail.com. And the reason is that it's 3% versus 30%, and it's a huge difference in the amount of donation that gets to me. And in addition to that, the PayPal donation goes directly into my account. I don't have to go through a middleman to get it. So that's a pretty good deal. So I do really mean it. I thank you. I mean, some of you really stepped up. I don't want to mention names and embarrass anybody, but thank you. I do know who you are, and I really, really, really do appreciate it. Okay, the next item, I guess, is to the little bit of a caveat here. I think you already realize this, but this is all my doing. This is all my idea. This is how I look at all of this. Doesn't necessarily mean it's the way everybody else does it. In fact, I'm pretty sure most people don't do it this way. And it doesn't necessarily mean it's the best way, but it's an easy way. And I think I can stick my neck out and say that what you're about to learn, it's the easiest way you can learn music that there is. I don't think there's an easier way out there anywhere. I've seen a lot of stuff, and most of it's way technical, way complicated. Yeah, it's just way harder. And this is simple. This is black and white simple. It's again, I say this, and I don't mean it as a slight. It's so simple, I can't believe I have to teach it. And I say that only because once you learn it, you'll go, yeah, this is really pretty simple. You're going to say the same thing. It's one of those things where, like, even after I taught myself how to play this way, I still didn't understand it exactly until I learned the Nashville number system. Once I learned that, then I went, oh, now I can explain this, because I couldn't explain it before. So anyway, that's what we're about to figure out and show you. And even if you already know the Nashville number system, this is going to be a little different, I think. All right, here we go. First of all, I would hope, this may be housekeeping too. I would hope that you've caught up to the lesson this far. In other words, I hope you understand lesson 1 and lesson 2, because it's going to build. Tonight is going to build on that. Now, if you really are struggling with any of that already, then you really should probably just watch this later and go back and really try to get that stuff nailed down. Now, so far we've learned, this chord shape. And as I've said, chord shapes, there's a lot of them. I'm showing you this one for a specific reason, and it will become apparent tonight, I think. I know this is the harder way to make the chord, but I will remind everybody again, it's not this way. You're not spreading your fingers out like this. You're not doing that. If you look at how I'm holding my hand, I'm going forwards and backwards. I'm not spreading them out. See, it's a totally different thing. And it's the angle. See, the neck is across about right in here, and it's the angle that makes that easier. And one more thing, and somebody else really pointed this out, and I should have said it, but if you're having trouble making it up here in the G where it's more spread out, well, come down here to the B. Your hand's a lot closer together, and learn it down here, and then just gradually work it up, whatever it takes. Okay, let's see here. There's, if you were to learn what you're about to learn tonight and only think of it in terms of letters, then there's at least, and I would say this is being very conservative, then there's at least 49 things you'll have to learn. At least. And I would say nearly impossible to learn, because it's nearly impossible to commit to memory because it's confusing. So that 49, conversely, the way I'm teaching it, you've got to learn 7 things. And you do have to commit these 7 things to memory. But 7 things committed to memory is a whole lot easier than 49. And 49 is conservative. I mean, it's real conservative. So anyway, there's the comparative difference of how much more simple this method will be. All right. Just as there are 7 letters in music, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, there are 7 numbers in the Nashville number system. And so you've got 1 through 7. Okay? And by the way, this is my actual rules that I wrote down, that after you learn these rules, and, I don't mean this as a brag, I'm just mean it as a fact. After you learn these rules and really commit them to memory, there's about a dozen of them. After you learn these rules and commit them to memory, then you can virtually play anything. It's really that straightforward. It'll make sense to you too, on top of it. So we've got these 7 numbers and 7 letters. Now, before we get into it, they're alphabetical and they're numerical down the fretboard. So they're always in alphabetical order and they're always in numerical order. So that's the good news. By the way, I meant to say this in the housekeeping. This is going to be a long lesson. This one's not going to be my 30 minutes on and 30 minutes questions and answers. This one's probably going to be a full hour. And I could easily have broken this into 2 parts. But this is one whole concept to me. It's one whole thing. And I don't want to break it into 2 parts. So there's that. So bear with me. The other thing I was going to say in housekeeping, and I forgot to say it, is that if I were you, I would get a pencil and paper handy, because there are some things that I think you're going to want to jot down. Primarily, these notes you're going to want to jot down. Now, I'm not providing these notes extra here, and the reason I'm not is because they're provided inside of my actual training that you can download from a website. I'm not necessarily saying you need to download that training, because basically every single thing that's in that training we're covering in these lessons. So I'm not holding anything back. There's nothing hidden in those lessons that you're not going to hear here. I'm just, other than the actual rules, and you can write these down. So that's what I'm saying. You might want to just get a pencil and paper to write these down. All right. Let's see. I keep backing up. Sorry. All right. So we've got the 7 letters and 7 numbers, but what does that mean? Well, each song has numbers associated to every song. I don't care what song it is. There's numbers associated to it. And some of you already know that the bass skeleton of pretty much every song is 1-4-5. Now, there are songs that only have 2 chords. Well, in that case, it's generally 1 and 5. You don't have a 4 in that case. But 1-4-5 is pretty much the skeleton of just about every song on the planet. And there'll be people that'll immediately say, well, I know an exception. We're not worried about exceptions. We're talking about the norm. We're talking about the 90% rule. Most everything I say tonight is like the 90% rule. Now, there will be a few things that I will tell you. This is 100%. You can count on this every single time. And I'll tell you that. And there'll be other things that I'll say, well, this is a little less. This is more like a 50-50 or a 75% or something. And I'm going to tell you that. Because not everything, even on these rules, is 100%. But if they're 80% and you can guess and be right 80% of the time, you're doing some darn good guessing. And that's really what this amounts to. All right, so now that you know that there are, 7 letters and there's 7 numbers, the thing to know next is you have to know what key you're going to play the song in. All right, and this is the one time you have to know the letter. You have to know the letter on the key. So if somebody says, we're playing this song in G, well, then G automatically becomes number 1. If they say we're playing this song in the key of E, Edward, well, then E is 1. It doesn't matter what key you're playing it in, but that becomes number 1. As soon as they say the key, you already know what the number 1 chord is, and that is the key that you're playing the song in. Then here is the standard way to understand the Nashville number system. And when I say standard way, I mean like almost everybody does this, especially at the beginning. They go, okay, G is 1, A is 2, B, C, D, E, and F. So there's your 7 chords, see? And that's how they do it. They do it on their hand. But I got no time for that stuff. That's way too complicated. We're going to learn it, and you're going to know it immediately. As soon as they say the key that they're playing the song in, you're going to know exactly where the numbers are based on this training this evening. As soon as somebody says the key, you're going to know where every single number is instantly. Once you learn this, understand this. But, it's not like something you have to think about. You'll know instantly where they are because they're all always in the same relative place from where you start. In other words, if you start as 1 is here, then all the other chords are related to that 1. And if you start as 1 is here, those same chords are going to be related in the same place relative to this place, if that makes any sense to you. In other words, like if you were talking driving directions, you go down there, you go down a block and you turn right. And maybe you're 100 blocks away. Now you go down 1 block and you turn right. It's the same kind of concept. It's the same exact thing. You're going to find these chords in the exact same place every single time. There's never an exception to that. And there's one little caveat to that. It's not really an exception, but there's one little minor difference, and I'm going to show you that. It only occurs in one particular key. So, and that's only because you run out of fretboard space. But other than that, there's no exception. It's always in the same exact place, and they're in the exact same position. Okay. All right, so let's start with... okay, we said the skeleton is 1-4-5. So what does that actually mean? Well, most of you who already know something about music, let's just say you're playing the song in G. Well, you already automatically kind of know that G, C, D is kind of your normal chords in G. Those are your main chords. Well, that's your 1-4-5 also. And again, it's alphabetical, G, C, D. So G being 1, C being the next one in the alphabet is 4, D being the next one in the alphabet is 5. So that's just how it is. So 1-4-5. Now, the trick is that you don't have to do this. You don't have to count nothing on your hand. Here's how you learn the 1-4-5 on the mandolin. It's exactly like the Nashville number system was designed on the mandolin, is the way I think of it. Okay, so there's your 1. Your 4 is always straight above your 1. Always. I don't care. Well, let me back up. I still got to say one more thing. There's two patterns we're going to show you on two chord patterns. Now, it's different than song patterns. There's song patterns too, but we're talking chord patterns right now. There's two chord patterns and only two chord patterns you have to learn. So in the first chord pattern, which is where you start with these two fingers on the bottom two strings, and anywhere we go up and down those bottom two strings, these rules will apply that I'm about to tell you. All right, so your 1, 4, 5, your 1 is right there. Your 4 is always right above it. And your 5 is always 2 more down. Now, that applies 100% of the time. So if we're down here and we say we're going to start in B, which is right here, where's your 4? It's right there, and your 5 is 2 down. Always. You never have to think about it. It's always in the same place. You only have to learn it one time. So, this is kind of like one of your 7 things that you have to learn, see? So there's your 1, there's your 4, there's your 5. 1, 4, 5. Doesn't matter where you do it. You can be in B flat. 1, 4, 5. It's always that way. Never an exception. Okay, so that's pattern 1 with the 1, 4, 5. Okay, no matter where you do it. You can be down here and you don't even know the name of the chord, and 1, 4, 5. It's the same. Doesn't matter where you do that on these bottom two strings, 1, 4, 5. Okay, so that's pattern number 1. That's chord pattern number 1, not to be confused with a song pattern that we're going to get into later. But chord patterns number 1, that's it. You only got to learn 2 patterns. That's it. Just 2 patterns. All right. Now, we're going to go up to, we're going to demonstrate pattern number 2 out of D. And this is for that one little caveat reason that's slightly different, but it's really not different, as I'll show you. But we're going to start at D for learning chord pattern number 2. And so now we're on the middle 2 strings. And the middle finger is on this dotted fret here, and on the A string. And then this finger's on the D string. And there's a fret between them, just like always. And then you've got this finger up here. We've already learned the chord, but I just trying to make sure you understand. This finger has no place to go. And I'm just not hitting the bottom string. All right, so now we're playing the song in D, dog, David. So now what is chord number 1? Chord number 1 is D. That's a 100% rule. Whatever key you're playing it in, that's always 1. So there's 1. Now, it might be helpful if I go back to G for a second. When we showed the G, we go 1, 4, 5. That's a counterclockwise circle, if you will. 1, 4, 5. 1, 4, 5. Counterclockwise. All right. This one is clockwise. It's opposite. So we're in D. So 1. Now we go down here to where G is. That's 4. And then 5 is A. So 1, 4, 5. 1, 4, 5. Doesn't matter where you start, anywhere up through here. If you start here in E, 1, 4, 5. 1, 4, 5. You can be way down here, don't even know the chord. It's still 1, 4, 1, 4, 5. Just like that. Can't hit it, but that's where it is. So the pattern's always the same, and there's only 2 patterns. Now, you might say, well, that's only 3 of the 7 chords, and that's true. That's only 3 of the 7 numbers. But the rest of the numbers are all in the same relative place from where 1 is. They're all just like the 1, 4, 5 is in the same relative place all the time. So are the other numbers. And therefore, after you just learn these 2 patterns, then you know pretty much everything there is to know about chords, because they're always going to be in the same relative place, even including your 7ths and your minors. And again, it's because we're keeping the same shape all the time in this one big chord. Okay? Now, if you go different shapes of chords, the rules still apply, but it's a lot more complicated. You got to think about a lot more things. I hope that makes sense to you. All right, so again, two patterns. 1, 4, 5, which is counterclockwise. 1, 4, 5, 1, 4, 5. Down here, 1, 4, 5, still counterclockwise. But if you go to if you go up to the middle two strings, now it's clockwise. It's 1, 4, 5. 1, 4, 5. One pattern's no harder than the other, but almost everybody thinks the first pattern I show you is the easy pattern. Partly because I show it to you first, you kind of lock in on it, and it makes it seem easier. But both patterns are equally the same. I mean, there's really nothing harder about the second pattern over the first. But that's the only two patterns you got to learn. So you've already learned 90% of what you need to know. And I know it seems like that's oversimplified, but you'll see here in a minute that it's really not. All right, now, let's see. I'm trying to remember how I wanted to say this. Okay, well, let's just move on. All right, whenever you have a song, like that's a 3-chord song primarily, is when you got the 1, 4, 5. But there are lots of songs that only have 2 chords. And whenever you have a song that only has 2 chords, well, then all they typically do is they drop the 4. So, and this is about a 95% rule. It's not 100% because you'll find some exceptions out there somewhere. But, 99 times out of 100, you probably aren't going to find an exception. So whenever you have a 2-chord song, it's only a 1 and a 5. Like, Skip to My Lou. I'm not going to sing it because if I sang it, then I'd get knocked on my copyright. But just give you an example. Da 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 da, like that. So that's 1 and 5. Okay, and that's pretty much true on the vast majority of 2-chord songs. There's lots of 2-chord songs, and almost all of them just do 1 and 5. I'm going to use one of my own songs as an example of this. We'll go to A. So it's 1 and 5. So it'd be A and E. So 1 and 5. So it may be too high. I may not even be able to do this. Did anybody take her picture? That's just too high. I'm going to go down to G. Did anybody take her picture? I've heard a picture's worth 1,000 words. And I'd like to have just one more conversation. So I'll have to let a picture speak for her. Okay? Again, it's still too high for me, but that's not the key I wrote the song in. But I'm just showing you it's just a 1 and a 5. That's all it is. I actually wrote that one in E, so let's demonstrate it 1 and 5 in E. Now remember, it's a reverse pattern, so it's 1, 4, and 5 is right below the 1. So in the first pattern, 4 is always above the 1. In the second pattern, 5 is always below the 1. Okay, if that helps you remember it. I don't know if that helps or makes it worse. But anyway, all right, we're in E. Did anybody take her picture? I've heard a picture's worth 1,000 words. And I'd like to have just one more conversation. So I'll have to let a picture speak for her. See, so it's 1 and 5. It doesn't matter, like the letters changed. See, that's the difference. That's what I was trying to explain to you at the beginning when I say you got to learn 49 things. Every time the key changes, now you have to learn where those 7 letters are relative to that first letter. But if you do it in numbers, you know where they are instantly. As long as you know those 2 patterns. I hope that makes sense. You won't see the patterns with letters. There's some of you that will say that you do and you understand the pattern. But let me explain it to you. Those people have been playing a long time, and they get it. But if you're new at this, you'll not see patterns in letters for a very long time. And even if ever. I mean, I played for years, and I never really saw the patterns. But as soon as I started playing in numbers, the patterns are very obvious. They're black and white. So, it's just 1 and 5, 1 and 5. That's all that song was, It doesn't matter if you're playing it in the first position, the first chord progression or the second chord progression. It doesn't matter which one you're playing it in. It's still just 1 and 5. I hope that makes sense to you, because it's a very critical point, is that, you can change keys real easy after you know the Nashville number system, where that's just another good example of making it much simpler. For instance, some of you have probably run into this. Like you learn the song, say in C or something, and then you decide, well, I can't really sing it there. It's way too high. Now you have to transpose all the chords in a different key. Well, with the numbers, as long as you're thinking in numbers, it's not even you don't even have to transpose it. You just know where it is instantly. So huge difference. Okay. I'm hoping this is making sense. Without having face-to-face contact and immediate feedback, it's hard to tell if I'm going over your head or if it's, I'm hoping it's making sense. All right. Let's see. Reading my notes here to make sure I don't miss something. All right. Let's go on. I think we've covered all these points up to this part so far. Here's just a rhetorical question, and that is, if I ask you, what comes after a G, you'd probably look at me with a stupid look and go, huh? Well, anything can come after a G, and you'd be right. Or you'd say, well, I don't know. One of those two, you'd get one of those two answers, and both of them are right, because neither one of them, I wouldn't know what comes after a G either. But here's the difference in numbers. If I say to you what comes after a 2-chord, see, we haven't learned the 2-chord yet. But if I ask you, I say, what comes after a 2-chord, you're going to be right 97% of the time if you say a 5-chord. Because that's what comes after a 2-chord. Now, you can't say that with letters. You can't go, well, every time you play an E, you're going to play a whatever. You can't say that. It doesn't work that way. But with numbers, it does. And so, again, if I say what comes after a 2-chord, your answer should be, and this is one of these Nashville number system rules you might want to write down, after a 2-chord, you're going to play a 5-chord. 95% of the time or more. I mean, that's pretty much the truth. There are exceptions, and I can even think of an exception or two, and I've even written an exception or two, but there's very few exceptions. Okay? All right, so here, let me give you a demonstration of that, and I'm looking for one of my songs that has this. It's in Grandpa's Old Fiddle is my own song that I wrote that has the 2-chord in it. I think it's in the chorus. So I'm going to do this in G. It's probably easier to make it understand. I don't normally sing this song in G. I normally sing it in D, but we'll try to do it in G and see if it works. I don't know if I can hit the key. Grandpa's old fiddle plays sweet. I don't know if I can sing it in that key, doggone it. Let's see. Grandpa's. I'll do it in D, and then after I do it, maybe in D, maybe I can also show it in the other key. So in the chorus, it's going to go to the 5 first. It goes, Grandpa's old fiddle played sweet melodies. And here comes the 2. And he played it from his heart for my grandma and me. That went back to the 5, see? So the 2 is always 2 notes higher than your 1. That's how simple it is. Your 3 is going to be higher than that. Your 4 is going to be higher than that. Your 5 is going to be higher than that. It's just numerical order. It's just alphabetical order. It's the way it works. You don't have to think about it. But it's better if you can just remember where they are in relative position from where you start. So with the D being 1 in this case on Grandpa's old fiddle, 5 is directly below it, and the 2 chord is always 2 notes higher. So it's just slide it up to E in this case. That's your 2 chord. So here we go again. I'm going to try that again. See, we're going to go directly to 5 to start the chorus. We go, Grandpa's old fiddle, back to 1, sweet melodies, now 2. And he played it from his heart for back to 5, Grandma and me. Wrinkled old hands, we're back to 1, see? That 2, and this is not just because it's my song. That after you play a 2 chord, 95% of the time, you're headed to a 5 chord. It's just that way. I can't tell you why that is. I didn't invent music. I'm just showing you the rules to it, which nobody else will show you these rules, because I've never heard anybody say these kinds of rules before until I wrote them down right here. So anytime you play a 2 chord, you're headed to your 5. Now let's try to demonstrate it up in the G. I don't know if I can, honestly. It's pretty hard. Grandpa's, I'll sing it real low, I guess. Grandpa's old fiddle played sweet melodies. Here comes a 2, and he played it from his heart for my grandma and me. Back to the 5. Wrinkle, back to 1. So 1, 2, 5. Those are your chords that we're using in this chorus right now. So Grandpa's old, no, I'm in the wrong. I got to go to the 5. Grandpa's old fiddle play 1, 1, 1, 2, 2, 2, 5, 5, 5. Back to 1, 1, 1. Back to 1. See, so I'm hoping this is making sense to you. That the rule is that you're trying to learn here is anytime you play a 2 chord, you're going to go to a 5 chord next. Most of the time, almost all the time. Now, let me tell you the second part of, there's another kind of a rule with a 2 chord, or it's kind of a 3-part rule here. The next part of the rule is that a 2 chord generally only comes in the first part of the verse. Like if you have a long verse and you wanted to call the 2 parts A and B, the 2 chord will almost always only, and I say almost always because there's exceptions, it will almost always be in part A. It's almost never in part B. And I say almost never because there are exceptions. So in other words, 80% of the time, maybe 90% of the time, whenever you have a 2 chord in a song, it's going to be in part A. It's not going to be in part B. Okay? Generally speaking, there are a few exceptions where there will be a 2 chord in both parts, or there'll be, and the 2 chord can be in another part of the song, like the chorus. It can be there, but I'm talking about just the verse, in terms of just the verse, or in terms of just the chorus. It's generally in the part A of the chorus or part A of the verse. I hope that makes sense. But that's just another rule to help you learn the song quicker. See, that you don't need to look for it in the second part because it's usually not there. I hope that's making sense too. Okay, now let me give you a let's see here. I wanted to demonstrate. I don't know. I'm trying to demonstrate this with my own songs. What I'm trying to explain is the next part of this 2 chord rule. The next part of the 2 chord rule is that it's one of the easiest chords to learn by ear. And the reason is that it always lifts up that part of the song and it jumps it up to that 5. The 5's higher, as you might understand, because 1 is going to be lower than 5. So you're going 1, 2, and then all the way up to 5. So you can hear that transition. So let me try to demonstrate that here on this other song that I wrote. And you'll hear me go to the 2 and then jump up to the 5. And listen, what you want to do here is listen to the 2 and see how it adds power and lifts the song up. Have you ever wished you were somewhere else, but when you got there, you wished you weren't? Like the doctor's office or the DMV or somewhere that you worked. Did you hear how it's pushing it up there and jumping up on that 5? Have you ever wished you were somewhere else, but when you got there, you wished you weren't? Like the doctor's office or the DMV or somewhere that you worked. That's not just because I wrote the song. That's the way it works on almost any of them. Any of them that have a 2-chord are going to sound something like that. They're going to jump from the 2 up to that 5. And you're going to hear that power being added. That's why a 2-chord is one of your easiest chords to recognize, even on the radio. You'll hear them hit that 2-chord, and you go, oh, he just hit a 2-chord. And you'll be proud of yourself because you can hear that, because it's a specific transition where you don't, like 1, 4, 5, I mean, there's a difference, obviously, and if you got a good ear, you'll sure hear the difference, but they're not as noticeably different as jumping from that 2 to that 5. It just is something that makes sense, and it'll make sense to you as you start listening for that. All right, so I'm going to do it with a different song here, I hope. I don't know where this comes in the song. I may have to sing too much of this. I hope not. From where I stand, I can see all the lights of the city. For one man to love one woman so much, it's a pity. Here, I think it's coming in this next part. From where I stand, I can see the cantina she goes to. Now here's where it comes. Where she's not supposed to. No, wait a minute. Yeah, that's your 2-chord, because we're playing this in C. I forgot to tell you that, but we're playing it in C. So that's your 2-chord, is the D there. So I'm down here. Where she's not supposed to, there's the 2, but goes anyway, back to 5. Dun, 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 dun. All right, so anyway, so there's that 2 to 5 always adds a lot of power to the song. From where I stand, I can see. Da, 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 da. Da, 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 da. All right, here's where it's going to come in. Da, 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 da. Here comes the 2. Da, 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 da. Anyway, that one's probably not as good as an example because of the way I'm coming into the 2. I'm coming into it out of the 5, which is kind of unusual. Generally, you're coming into the 2 out of the 1, generally. So that's not a good example song to show you that lift and power. But the point is, after a 2, doesn't matter how you get there, for the most part, after a 2, you're going to a 5. Okay? That's the rule. That's the part you need to really understand. All right, now we're going to have about the same kind of a rule with a 3-chord. So we've learned 1, 4, 5. We know where the 2 is now. It's just 2 notes higher. So where would the 3 be? Of course, it would be up, another chord up higher. So like if you're playing in G, so there's your 2 is A, and your 3 would be B. But I don't jump all the way down here for my B. What I do is I go up to the, like if I wanted my B here while I'm in G, I jump it right here. It's right next to your C. Let me tell you, here's another one of the rules. Just like there's no flats and sharps between B and C in the letters, or E and F in the letters, there are no flats and sharps between 3 and 4, and there's no flats and sharps between 6 and 7. So those are the numbers that have no flats and sharps between them. They're right next to each other. So anytime you're playing a 4, if you back up just one fret, you're in a 3. Or anytime you're in a 3 and you go one fret forward or higher, you're going to be in your 4. Because they're right next to each other. There's nothing between them. Same way with the C and the B and the C is the same way, and the same way with the E and F in letters. But on numbers, it's always going to be your 3 and the 4 and your 6 and 7 have no flats and sharps between them. That's just a rule. And once you learn that rule, it's helpful. So here's the I don't have any songs of my own that have a 3 in them that I could think of. I couldn't find one anyway today. So I'm going to, like Blue Virginia Blue, I think of the 3-chord as being what I call the pretty sound or the pretty transition, because it transitions from a 3 to a 4. So like that first question I asked you, where do you go after a 2? You always go to a 5. Well, on a 3, where do you go after a 3? You almost always go to a 4. It's not 100%, it's not, but it's most of the time you're going to go to a 4. Almost all the time. So I'm going to demonstrate this by humming this Blue Virginia Blue, and you're going to see that I'm going to go from this 3 here, slide forward to the 4, and you're going to hear that pretty transition. So here's your 1, we're playing it in G. 1, it's going to go 3, then it's going to go 4. And it's a real pretty sound. If you listen to it, that's how I identify it in a song. You can hear that transition. It's a pretty sound. It's unusual compared to the rest of the sounds. Da 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 da. Here comes the 3. Da 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 da. See, it's barely anything. It's just one note higher. Do it again. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. So it's just 3 to 4. And it doesn't matter which chord pattern you're in. When you go to a 3, you're going to go to a 4 next. It's just the way it works. I hope that makes sense. So in this case, when I'm in this pattern, your 3 is always one note flat of your 4. So your 4 is right here. So one note flat of it's your 3. So if I'm humming this in a higher key, so right now we're going to do it in A. Da 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 da. Here comes the 3. Da 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 da. Right? So there's showing it to you in a couple of places there. You could do it up here and be the same thing. So it's the same thing. Doesn't matter where you do it. It's just one note sliding up from a 3 to a 4. So now if we're doing it in the other pattern, and I haven't practiced this, so it might take me a second. Let's try to hum that song in E. I've never done this before in my life. Da 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 da. I'm going down to a 3. Da 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 da. See, there's your 3, there's your 4, there's your 5, there's your 1. We're in E, so E is 1, so 3, 4, 5. Again, all of these numbers never move. They're always in the same relative place. So that's the key about the numbers versus the letters. Because see, every time you change letters, all of the other letters, all of your other chord letters change. They don't change in numbers. They stay the same. That's what makes it easy. You don't have to relearn it 50 times. 49 to be exact. You know, it's always the same thing. You just got to learn it one time, really. And then there's 2 different, patterns, 2 chord patterns. But you only have to learn really one concept, and then there's 2 chord patterns to apply the concept. That's all there is to it. There's nothing more to it than that. Absolutely nothing more. So don't make it harder than it is. That's all there is to it. There's no hidden things to learn. That's it. Okay, moving on. Let's see here. What else? All right. All right, now let's talk about minor chords. We haven't talked about 6 and 7 yet. So now we're going to move into like the 6th chord, which is often, and I say often, it's not always, but it's often, like maybe 50% of the time, it's going to be a minor, maybe a little more than that. So whenever you're playing a 6 in a song, it's often going to be a 6 minor. Not all the time. So just be real clear on that. It's not all the time. It's not even 90%. It's like a little more than 50-50. But when you hear a minor song, when you hear a minor that's coming into a song, you go, what is that? Almost always, and I shouldn't say it that way, often, very often, it's going to be a 6 minor. In fact, I would say 70% of the time, when you hear a minor in a song, it's going to be a 6 minor. Probably 70%. Maybe it's only 65%, but it's close. Okay? If it's not the 6 minor, the next most common minor is your 2 minor. So maybe another 20% of the time it's going to be your 2 minor, and maybe 30 more percent of the time it's going to be a 2 minor. I don't know. And then the last percentage, it's going to be a 3 minor. So your 6 minor is when you hear a minor in a song, instantly check your 6 minor, because most likely you're going to be right. If it's not that one, then go to your 2 minor. If it's not that one, then go to your 3 minor. So that's another rule in learning to play this kind of music, is that, it always helps if you can, make more accurate guesses. Instead of just searching all over the place, what was that? And just searching, 9 times out of 10, or maybe 99 times out of 100, if you follow that rule and search at your 6 first, then your 2, then your 3, 99 times out of 100, you're going to be right. Now, if it turns out it's still not one of those, well, then you're kind of on your own. It could be any of those other 4 chords. I mean, it's possible anything can be a minor, but I'm just telling you, in general terms, on most songs, 6 minor is by far your most common minor. Okay? All right. Let's see. And let me show you where the 6 is. All right. So again, if we're in G and G is 1, well, then you got your 4 here, your 5. Well, then 2 more down is 6. So 1, 4, 5, and then 6. So your 6 is a long way from your G, see? So the most popular song in bluegrass, I would say, that has the 6 minor in it, or the most common one that everybody knows, would be probably Foggy Mountain Breakdown, instrumental. Well, again, I'm not going to try to play it exactly. I'm just going to kind of hum it and show you where the 6 minor comes in. So you're in, your G is 1. So that's 6 minor, 6 minor, 1, 1, 1, 6 minor, 6 minor, 1, 1, 1, back to 5, back to 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 6 minor, 6 minor, 1, 1, 1, 6 minor, 6 minor, 1, 1, 1, 5, 5, back to 1. Okay? So your minor, like I said, the most common minor is going to be a 6 minor. It's not 100% by any stretch, but it's the most common one. It happens in tons of songs. Just tons of songs have a 6 minor in them. Quite a few have a 2 minor, and quite a few do have a 3 minor also. But it's mostly the 6 minor is where you should start looking. If you're not, if you can't just instantly hear the difference, and I can't say that I can always instantly hear it, but most of the time I can figure out which minor it is quicker than going through all 3 of them. But especially at the beginning, your best place to start is 6, then go to 2, then go to 3. All right, let's see. yeah, we're we're going to probably run into a full hour here at least, and then we'll take questions. Let's see. I've already told you about the flats and sharps. But there's no flats and sharps between 3 and 4. No flats and sharps between 6 and 7. All right. The last rule that I have on this page basically is it's about the circle of fifths. This is just another chord pattern that comes up in lots and lots and lots of songs. And it's one that when you're new, it's going to throw you every single time because you're not going to understand what it is. But if you can remember your numbers and your number patterns, it's a piece of cake. It's the most complicated thing I'm showing you here tonight, probably, in terms of things, but it's a circle of fifths, and it's always the same numbers. It's always the same numbers. It's 1, 6, 2, 5, 1, and it's in that combination, 1, 6, 2, 5, 1. And by the way, it's often started with a 4. Which, it's not really part of your circle of fifths, but you'll feel it coming by leading into this 4. I'll demonstrate it with one of my songs, the circle of fifths, 1, 6, 2, 5, 1, and I'll sing the song first, and then I'll point out what it really is. So here we go. Have you ever wished you were somewhere else, but when you got there, you wished you weren't? Like the doctor's office or the DMV or somewhere that you work. Well, that's my whole life story, and if you listen to my sad tale, here we go. Here's the 4. Tell you why I had to spend 10 years in the Tupelo County Jail. So, tell you why I had to spend 10 years in the Tupelo County Jail. That's a circle of fifths. 1, 6, 2, 5, 1. That's all it is. It starts with your 4 generally. Well, tell you why I had to spend 10 years in the Tupelo County Jail. Tell you why I had to spend 10 years in the Tupelo County Jail. So it's 1, 6, 2, 5, 1. Doesn't matter which chord pattern you're in, the numbers are always the same. 1, 6, 2, 5, 1. So all you have to do is know where your 6 is. And if you're in this key or if you're in D here, your 5 is here, so your 6 is going to be just 2 notes higher. That's all it is. So it's so we'd start with the 4. It'd be tell, if I can get in the right key to sing it. Tell you why I spent. Tell you why I spent 10 years in the 1, 6, 2, 5, 1, 1, 6, 2, 5, 1, 1, 6, 2, 2, 5, 1. So the numbers are the same. I never play this song in this pattern, so it's a little awkward for me. But it doesn't take me long to transfer it. And this is, again, I always do that song in G, so playing it out of D or something is a little awkward at the beginning, but it's just like you or me. It's much easier to, how would you have transposed that in letters? It would have taken me 30 minutes to transpose that in letters. With numbers, you just got to remember it's a 1, 6, 2, 5, 1, and so you just go to where those numbers are. 1, 6, 2, 5, 1. That's all there is to it. So that's why this number system is so important. It's for you can transpose any song in any key very, very easily. And like one of the things you'll find out if you get into the jamming of this is that you'll spend hours learning a song, and then you go to a jam session and they'll say, "Oh, we don't play that in that key. You got to play that in G or whatever." Well, yeah, that would blow your whole thing, but if you know the numbers, it's pretty easy to transcribe it right there on the spot. Let's see. I hope this is making sense. I hope I'm not just talking to myself. It looks like we've lost viewers, so maybe I'm not doing so well. We've only got 105 viewers now. All right, now I'm going to talk about song patterns. We've been talking about chord patterns. but I want to talk about song patterns. There's an infinite number of patterns, don't get me wrong, but there's two primary patterns that I would say most songs use, at least, or they may combine them, or, they use maybe one pattern in one part and another pattern in another part of the song. Now, let me just show you. Now, don't confuse this with chord patterns. This is song patterns. This is the way people write songs. Okay? So I'm hoping that doesn't confuse you. But there's what I call a circle pattern. And again, it's just like your 1-4-5. It's just 1-4-5 in a circle. So one of the songs I wrote that's in a circle pattern is Grandpa's Old Fiddle. Let's see. I'm going to do it out of the D position. So we're going to go 1-4-5, in a circle. And it's just going to be a circle. An old battered case, weathered and worn, with the hinges all rusted and the fabric all torn, but still cradled inside was one old precious thing. It was Grandpa's old fiddle. Oh, how sweetly it rings. See, it just went in a circle. That's all it did. 1-4-5 in that circle. Okay, and it wouldn't matter if you were doing in G. It'd just be 1-4-5 in G or 1-4-5 anywhere. It's just a circle, though. That's one kind of song pattern that comes up a lot. You'll hear that a lot. There's another song pattern that comes up a lot, and it's a pivot pattern. And let me show you a pivot pattern. Now, it pivots around the 1. So it goes up to 4, comes back to 1, goes up to 5, comes back to 1. Or it might not do them in that order, but basically 1 is in between the other 2 chords all the time. So here's Father of Bluegrass that I wrote that has the pivot pattern. Bill Monroe is the father of bluegrass. He's the one that gave us all this joy. He picked up an old Gibson mandolin, and he formed a band called the Bluegrass Boys. See how it went 1-4, 1-5, 1-4, 1-5. It just goes, it just back and forth instead of in a circle. So I just wanted to show you that too, that most songs have either of those patterns or a combination of them. Some of them will start off with a pivot pattern and then go to a circle. And some will start with a circle and then go to a pivot, But it's just kind of a pattern to notice. Again, you might notice that with letters, but with numbers, you start to see these patterns, and they just show up everywhere. All right, I probably run all of this into the ground. I hope that it's made some sense to you guys. Well, we're at least back up to 109 viewers. So anyway, I think that's probably where I'm going to leave it for tonight. And we're going to go into questions here, but for next week, what I'll probably do is just reinforce all of these things I've told you tonight with song examples, and we'll just go through them and reinforce the examples of these different rules, and we'll just do that, maybe a couple of nights in a row. All right, let's go. After we went live, I'm going to go after we went live. I'm not going to bother with the questions before we went live. Kim Williford, good evening, Jerry. I'm in great time tonight with you and everyone. Well, good. I'm glad you're here. Nancy Seymour, I tried to play along with you guys last Thursday. Well, good. Trying is where it's at. I mean, you just got to start somewhere. Nobody gets this all in one single night. I shouldn't say that. I've had a couple of kids that I've only had to give them one lesson. Now, it was a long lesson, don't get me wrong, but I've only had to give them one lesson, and they just got it and took off. It's amazing sometimes. It's really amazing. Joe Dean was one of those who played banjo for Doyle. He was a musical genius, no question about it. Ronald Todd, I'm trying to pay with PayPal. I'm not good at this. Yeah, if you have a PayPal account, you should be able to go, somebody said you go into the families and friends or something like that section of that, and then you just say send money by email, or something like that, and then you just type in my email address. But thank you anyway. Mark Nadzum says, I didn't find a mandolin yet. Well, doggone it. Let's see, moving on down. Kim Williford, it does make a ton of sense. I will go over this lesson and take notes later. I don't have a desk where I'm at. Okay. David Tharp, that's exactly how I taught myself the guitar. May not know the names of the chords, but I know where they are relative to where I started and can play it. Yeah, and that's really all it amounts to. Every single thing is relative from where you start. It never changes. Those positions never, ever change. But if you were trying to do that same concept with letters, it'll fry your brain because you don't see a pattern with the letters like you see with the numbers, because the numbers, and the reason is simple, because the numbers never change. The letters, every single time you change keys, all of the relative letters have changed their names. But with numbers, they don't. The numbers stay the same no matter what key you're in. I hope that concept's getting through, because that's the important concept right there. They never change. The numbers never change. David Thorpe, that's okay. Let's see. Kim Wilford, Jerry, I'm still with you. It's making sense with me. Well, good. I'm hoping so. Carolyn Fike, show the minor shape again. Okay. Yes. Yeah, I haven't showed the minors and sevenths all that much. I think I showed it in the last one a little bit, but yeah, minors, all of your minors. Again, there are easier ways to make minors. I just want everybody to understand that I'm not trying to pull wool over your eyes or something. I'm not trying to make you do it the hardest way. It's just that if you keep all of this the same, all of this whole concept will make a lot more sense to you. But anyway, the way I do it, your minors, all you got to do is just pull that one finger back. And I say all because I know that's not easy. But if you got your hand in the right alignment, you're not spreading it back, you're pulling it back. See, it's just pulling it back. I'm not spreading anything, So no matter where you are, doesn't matter what it doesn't matter which pattern you're in, anywhere you are on the fretboard, anytime you want a minor, all you do is back up your first finger, one fret. Like you're right there. Hear the difference in the minor sound? There's your D major, D minor, D major, D minor. Doesn't matter where you are. E, E major, E minor, G, G minor, A minor. Any place you are, just back your first finger, one fret back, and there's your minor. Sevenths. Sevenths are more complicated, but they're still played out of this chord position. And that is sevenths, like if you're in G again, I just generally show everything out of G because it's the starting place, if you will. You basically skip, this finger stays where it's at. This one jumps across that string and goes to the string above it. Therefore, you have to, it's now not touching. So So it doesn't matter where you're at, or if you're up on D. All right. Now, I told you when we started this that there's two patterns, two chord patterns, not song patterns, chord patterns. And that's true. And I told you there's really no exceptions. Well, the one exception I forgot to go back to is the key of, or the letter, the chord of F. When you're in C, for instance, it's C would be 1 when you're playing in C, and if you're playing up here. Now, you can play C down here, and then there's no exception. But up here, there's an exception because you run out of fretboard. So your C is there. Now, your 4 would normally be like this. But see, I don't have a place for this finger. See, I'm off my fretboard. So like C, that would be 4, and then the 5 would be here. So what I do for that, this is the one exception I make to this shape. It's the only one that I can think of that I make to this shape. So 1, instead of doing that for 4, which you could do that. It sounds fine. It's perfect. So instead of doing that, what I do is I just drop this finger back to here and put that one up there. So there's your 1. There's your F. So that's your 4 when you're playing in C. C, and then, so I just do that. Instead of doing this, which I could do, but it's just awkward, you know. So there's your F, and then there's, I'm sorry, there's your 7th out of G, and then there's your F there. So it's very similar to your G7th. So anyway, that F right there is the only exception I make to that chord shape. So, you know, when I say there's 2 patterns, there still is only 2 patterns. And technically, that chord shape isn't really an exception. It's just that you run out of fretboard. And so I just play it that way. Just works for me. Okay, any other questions here? Let's see. So that was Carolyn, asked for the minor there. Okay, Dottie Hildebrandt, I lost my electric and just got it back. We'll have to watch many times. Yeah, well, feel free to watch it as often as you want there, Dottie, because this is a critical lesson tonight. It really is. And it's really hard to tell if I'm losing people because I have no way to know. Face to face when I'm giving this lesson, I look at them and I can see if they're getting it or they're not getting it, you know. And I could be going too fast. I don't know. So you'll just have to go back through it a bunch of times if you're lost. Bill Mumbo, the fog is clearing, Jerry. I'll rewatch it tomorrow. Yep, it's 2 a.m. now. Thanks for hanging in there, Bill. Richard Herbranson, we need to learn the chords to know where number 1 will be. Yeah, well, was the first 2 lessons, was learning the chords. And especially this full-fingered, 4-fingered chord. But those first 2 lessons are critical to doing what we do here tonight. Jelvis Skidmark's Band, thoroughly enjoying the lesson. Owned a mandolin for years and never played it. Well, good. Hopefully you can play it now. Steve Mays, this is way easier than trying to figure out chords once I stopped trying to figure out what chords you were in. Numbers only. Yeah, really. The only time you need to know the chord letter, really, seriously, the only time you have to know it is what key are we playing this song in. And, of course, you have to know where that chord is on your mandolin. So you still got some learning to do the old traditional way. You got to know where those chords are. But they're alphabetical, so if you know where G is, well, you can pretty much find all the rest of them. So there's G, A, B, and then the next fret is C, because there's no sharps and flats between B and C, remember? So G, A, B, C. And then you come back up here to C, which is right above your G. C, D, E, and then the next fret is F, because there's no flats and sharps between E and F. It's just the way it works. That's the way music works. I didn't invent that part. I didn't make that part up. That's just the way it works. Ronald Todd, like Bill, the fog is slowly clearing. I'll have to go back again and again. Still having trouble with finger stretching. Yeah, it's really better if you've got the chords down. You got to understand the chords to understand tonight's lesson. You know, you got to know where the chords are. But everything is relative from where you start. It doesn't really, as long as you know what key you're in, then you know where your 4 is, you know where your 5 is instantly. It's not like you have to think about it because they're always in the same place. So you can name any song in the world. I don't care what the song is. And you say, we're playing this song in F. All right, well, I could come up here to my F. Now I know where my 4 is, and I know where my 5 is. So I've already ahead of the ball game because I already know 3 chords in the song, or at least potentially 3 chords in the song, because generally speaking, they all have a skeleton of 1, 4, 5. And I know that's a little bit general to say that because there are lots of songs that are pretty weird, but they still all kind of revolve around 1, 4, 5. Ben Boyd. Let me see here. Maybe I skipped one. David Tharp says a chord is made of triad of the first, third, and fifth. See, again, those are things you don't need to know. It's nice to know that. It's not hurting you to know it, but you don't need to know any of that. It doesn't matter. See, that's where all that technical stuff gets in the way for me. When I'm trying to learn all that technical stuff, I get glazed over. It doesn't matter. You don't need to know any of that. Sure, it helps you if you do know all that stuff. If you're a music major and you can read music and all that kind of stuff, that's wonderful. I'm not knocking that at all. But I'm just saying for the average person who's trying to learn, especially once you get older, you don't need any of that complicated stuff. It's just black and white. It's right here on the fretboard. Ben Boyd, that was a ton of information, but I think I might actually understand it. Well, I think if you go back through it a couple of times for everybody, I'm pretty sure you'll get it. We're down to 89 viewers. We're dropping like flies. Charles Wilson, when you played the 6, you kept the same fingering and didn't need to flatten the 3rd because it happened naturally. Okay? Yeah, again, technical. If it's a minor, in a circle of fifths, it's not a minor. It's just a straight 6, in that circle of fifths that I was telling you about. 1, 6, 2, 5, 1. That's not a minor in that case. When you're playing a regular song and you hit a minor and you're not doing a circle of fifths, I said that wrong. When you're playing just your average song and you hit and you hear and you go to a 6, most of the time it's going to be a 6 minor. Not always, though. It's not always. I just want to be clear about that, because there are plenty of songs that will have a 6 that aren't minors, but very often it is a minor. So that's when you will go to your minor, or you'll hear that minor sound and you don't know what was that, and it's generally a 6 minor. I don't know. I'm hoping it makes sense. Charles Wilson, I read that one. Let's see. The Freeze. Popped in to check things out. Once job, wished I'd gotten here earlier. Okay, well, guys, I'm probably going to let that be it for tonight then. We've gone an hour and 15 minutes, and I just hope I didn't totally blow it and confuse everybody, because tonight's lesson is the important lesson. The next lesson, which I guess will be next Thursday night, we'll go back through, we'll just do a lot more. We'll actually be playing more songs then and talking about the rules to reinforce the rules within certain songs. And we'll dissect those rules in that particular song. That's how we'll do next week's lesson. Hope that makes sense. Thanks for being here. We will, and if you would make a contribution via PayPal, that would be wonderful. Or if you want to make a super chat, you can do that at any time. You don't have to do it while it's live here. It can be done later on the video also. And same way with the PayPal. Thank you, guys. We will talk to you later.